Spectacular Spider-Man. Hey, it's Andre, and I am Heroes. I grew up on Spider-Man through the cartoons. I remember the classic 60s animated series. I wasn't born then, I wasn't alive then, but I remember reruns of the cartoon. I also remember the 80s Spider-Man cartoon, including Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. I, of course, watched some of the 90s Spider-Man cartoon that was on Fox Kids Network. I even remember Spider-Man being on the Electric Company. Now, I know that Spider-Man has had some cartoon season. There's like an Ultimate one and a Web Warriors one, and I don't know. But one time I was on Disney Plus and I was looking at the list of Spider-Man cartoons, and I felt like there was one missing. And that's because that particular Spider-Man cartoon I was thinking of was not made by Disney. It was made by Sony, and it's actually a very popular fan favorite Spider-Man cartoon that I unfortunately never watched. And the cartoon that I'm talking about is The Spectacular Spider-Man, which ran from 2008 to 2009. The Spectacular Spider-Man was not a continuation. Spectacular Spider-Man was like a modern take inspired by classic The Amazing Spider-Man comic book stories, being able to mix comedy, drama, action, and the human element of Spider-Man and his friends and foes. Even being able to give some interesting backstories and detailed setups of the various Spider-Man allies and villains, as well as going through the element of Spider-Man himself coming to grips with his new powers, because the series takes place not too long after he got the spider bite that made him the Spectacular Spider-Man. And even though the animation may look a little simplistic, that style was able to allow the characters, particularly Spider-Man, to move very fluidly, have that kind of fast style that we were used to seeing in the Sam Raimi movie. The Spectacular Spider-Man was a big hit with both critics and fans, some even comparing it as the Spider-Man equivalent of Batman or Superman the Animated Series. So that's the weird thing. If this show was so popular, why would a show that good be stopped after only 2 seasons? Well, The Spectacular Spider-Man, unfortunately, was a good show with bad timing. So The Spectacular Spider-Man premiered in March of 2008 on Kids WB to become the CW. The first season aired on Kids WB, but then later in 2008, the CW discontinued Kids WB altogether, giving the Saturday morning lineup to 4Kids TV to create the CW 4Kids, which showed reruns of The Spectacular Spider-Man, but did not renew it for a second season. Luckily, in 2009, Toon Disney was retooled to become Disney XD. Disney to the extreme. They needed action cartoons, and The Spectacular Spider-Man was up for grabs, so The Spectacular Spider-Man moved to Disney XD and played for a second season. And then things get really complicated. Now, I'm going to try to explain this as best as I possibly can. I'm sorry if I get some of the factoids not exactly correct, but this is the basic gist of what I understand happened from what I read. So at the time, Sony had the rights to make both Spider-Man movies and animated series, but at some point they kept the movie in 2009. Also in 2009, Disney bought Marvel for $4 billion, which meant that now Disney was able to create Spider-Man animated series since Marvel now had the rights to make Spider-Man animated series. They just couldn't make Spider-Man movies because Sony still had the rights to the Spider-Man movies. But Sony still had the rights to the Spectacular Spider-Man since they made it. But they did not have the rights to make any more Spider-Man cartoons because they gave those rights back to Marvel, who now is owned by Disney. Disney could make Spider-Man cartoons, but they couldn't make more episodes of the Spectacular Spider-Man because Sony owned that. So when we got Ultimate Spider-Man a few years later, that was pretty much the nail in the coffin that the Spectacular Spider-Man was no more. Luckily, with the show being on DVD and eventually on digital, it was not lost forever. And with this unfortunate circumstances causing it to be a short-lived series, it of course has gained a fan and cult following, especially considering how good a lot of people thought the show was. I thought it might be a great time to go visit the Spectacular Spider-Man, check out a few episodes to see what I think about this series, since everyone speaks so highly of it. So for the very first time, I watched the first 3 episodes of The Spectacular Spider-Man. Now, I own The Spectacular Spider-Man on DVD, 26 episodes on 8 DVDs for some reason. And you can buy the series online through iTunes or Google Play or Amazon. But as of the recording of this video, the series is not on Disney Plus. I'm assuming because of all the legal mumbo jumbo. I don't even know if it's on Crackle. It's also not on Netflix, at least not in the United States. Sponsor, Surfshark. Surfshark is a VPN or virtual private network that keeps your internet browsing and online identity hidden and safe, protecting you from data theft, tracking and hacking, virus attempts, policy, so Surfshark doesn't have access to your data either, and you can use it on unlimited devices. Surfshark also allows you to connect to the internet internationally no matter where you are in the world, removing restrictions on movies and TV series that are available on streaming services in other countries. I complained that I could not find one of my favorite movies online, Super Mario Brothers. Don't judge me. In fact, the only online option I could find in the United States is only available online on Netflix in Germany. Super Mario Brothers in Germany. So with Surfshark, I changed my internet location to Germany, logged into Netflix, and boom. Now I can watch Mario and Luigi Mario Trust the Fungus on the 2017 Power Rangers movie on Netflix. And I found the 1995 Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the movie on Disney Plus through Star. Oh, Canada. And in over 30 countries, most of which you can connect to via Surfshark, you can find all 26 episodes of The Spectacular Spider-Man using your same Netflix account. So click the link in the description to sign up for Surfshark so you can safely surf the web and enjoy it worldwide, plus 3 extra months for free, and they even have a 30-day money-back guarantee. Thank you, Surfshark, for sponsoring this video and for helping me watch The Spectacular Spider-Man, which we're gonna deep dive into right now. So starting off with the first episode of The Spectacular Spider-Man, something I noticed right off the bat is this is definitely a wisecracking Spider-Man. This is that type of Spider-Man that just continuously makes jokes, keeps talking smack the entire time while he's taking down the bad guys, getting on their nerves, which is the kind of Spider-Man I actually like. I always dig that. And it was also funny because he's going up against a couple of thugs, but I was like, wait a minute, isn't that gonna be Sandman? And I think that other dude might be Rhino. I'm not sure, but are they setting up bad guys before they become the bad guys that we really know them to be? That's really neat. I like that they are using characters in this series pre their villain form, so you get to see the story progress with these characters along the way. That's really cool. Spider-Man is trying to get his last piece of summer vacation action of being Spider-Man going before he has to go back to school, and we see Peter Parker being a complete geek. He has this feeling like, oh, things are gonna be better now that I'm Spider-Man, but because of course he has to keep his secret identity, he can't go full Spider-Man in public when he's Peter Parker. So that means he's got to continue being made fun of course, by Flash Thompson. He also has to deal with Aunt May ever since they lost Uncle Ben, having to deal with the bills. They're behind on bills. They can't pay a lot of stuff. Again, a superhero that just can't get money after being a superhero. Brother can't get a loan. But luckily he has a couple of friends by his side. He's already friends with Gwen Stacy, and he's also friends with Harry Osborn. I think Harry Osborn is a bigger geek than Peter Parker. Someone who knows how to do something with his life, unlike some other people I know. Like his dad, Norman Osborn, just constantly rails on how Harry is just a nothing to him. Oh, Peter, you have such potential, unlike some kids I know. I'm like, God dang, Norman, get off the kid's back. But this cartoon proves right off the bat that Norman Osborn is an evil businessman as much as he is a Toomes. Yes, the scientist named Toomes just happened to make some kind of flight device. And Norman's like, well, thanks for your device. I'm going to take it. But by the way, you're an old scientist and you've done nothing good for the company. So I'm firing you, you old buzzard. Peter even takes on an internship thinking it's going to give him money. Oh, and Peter tells Norman Osborn about that internship at Dr. Khan. Considered for that internship, were they? Huh? Harry? Early in this series before he's venomous. But Eddie's like, yeah, dude, this is an internship. You his arms and has been taking some secret lizard DNA based formula to be a test subject to see if it will help regenerate his arm back, because lizards can sometimes regenerate their parts. Gee, I wonder if that will go wrong for poor Dr. Connors. Again, I'm loving this. Setting up characters as opposed to them just already being their villain. That's really cool. Speaking of which, Toomes officially becomes the Vulture. I love the part where he's like, what did you call me? Ah, yes, the Vulture. And Norman was like, no, I called you the Buzzard. You can't even get that right. And the funny thing is that Vulture just keeps messing with Norman Osborn, picking him up in the air, dropping him, picking him up again. You think he wants to kill him, but he's just like, nah, man, I just want an apology. The whole time he's just like, I just need you to apologize. Say I made this stuff. Give me my credit or I will kill you. He's like Oliver. Wow. That is quite the reference, Andre. That shows you how I'm hip with the YouTube and the TikTok audience referencing the freaking live action Popeye movie. You owe me an apology. Respect Shelley Duvall. Spider-Man, of course, stops the Vulture the first time, but he's like, that ain't gonna get me paid. I need to make some money. So he heads over to the Daily Bugle. I got an idea. Let me get you some pictures of Spider-Man, and then that way you can get me some money. And so, of course, we get J. Jonah Jameson in this cartoon, who is just, he's not voiced by J.K. Simmons, but the style is there. Get pictures of Spider-Man for money? That's a dumb idea, kid. Get out of here. Hey, I got a great idea. Why don't we get pictures of Spider-Man? Whoever gives me those pictures, I'll pay him money. Ha ha. Love J. Jonah Jameson. But Spidey ain't got time to take pictures because he has to fight the Vulture yet again to save Norman Osborn. But while Spidey's trying to stop the Vulture, someone's trying to stop Spidey. But he was attacking the bad guys earlier. What Spider-Man didn't know was that he was being watched through a very good live stream. I mean, for him. So you got Norman Osborn being attacked by the Vulture being stopped by Spider-Man, and Spider-Man being attacked by these enforcers. A lot of action going on. This whole scene is great. It really showcases how action-packed this series can get, while of course having all the emotions that we saw earlier. And this is all in the first episode, so I could definitely see someone watching this grab Spider-Man in a net, and his way to try to save himself is he throws his web out and it hits a gargoyle. And I was like, that gargoyle looks familiar. It's almost like someone that worked on this show might have also worked on gargoyles, and it was a subtle in-joke reference to gargoyles. I understood that reference. And poor Spidey can't catch a break. He stops the Vulture, he saves the day, but he goes home as Peter Parker, and Aunt May is like, you passed your curfew. You gotta be in at 10 o'clock from here on out. I'm giving you a phone. Call me at 9:58, and you better be here. Poor Spider-Man. He's just like, I'm still a geek. My Aunt May's mad at me for breaking curfew, but hey, I'm still out there saving the world. What a life being Spider-Man. And then you look up in the sky, and the Spider logo in the sky. Spidey in the sky, oh. So of course I was like, next, give me the next one. In the second episode, we meet Electro because Dr. Connors is trying to create this new way of collecting the energy from eels to have some new clean energy source. But after a freak accident, Max is electrocuted by those eels next to some other technology. And the way they have to keep him alive is they put him in this insulation suit, which looks very familiar to the Electro suit. And what's very cool about this episode is that Electro starts off not really being a villain. He's just obviously upset at what happened to him. He blames Dr. Connors for it, but he just wants to get back to normal. He just doesn't trust anyone right now. Meanwhile, because he looks like a giant electric person, everyone just assumes he's a villain, including Spider-Man. Because Spider-Man is still trying to get photos of himself to sell to the Daily Bugle to get some money to help out Aunt May. So when he sees Electro for the first time, he just assumes that he's a bad guy and attacks him when he didn't really do anything except try to get some coffee, which he can't drink because of his electric mouth. Poor man! But of course, after being judged by people, feeling betrayed by Dr. Connors for getting him in the form that he's in, no one taking it seriously as they think they should because he's the one dealing with this, and Spider-Man eventually attacking him. At that point, he's like, yeah, I'm full villain now. All y'all did this. We also get the introduction to Liz Allen. She's failing one of her classes, so the teacher recommends that Peter Parker tutors her, but she ain't about hanging out with Peter Parker. She's a girlfriend of Flash Thompson. She's one of the most popular girls in school, so of course she can't hang out with this geek Peter Parker. But what's really wild and very telling. So Peter tries to be all nice to Liz Allen and try to teach her, and she just ignores him, is on her phone the whole time, keeps calling him a geek. And at one point when he has to go off and be Spider-Man and save the day, he's like, you know what, woman, I'm fine with my classes. I'm trying to help you. So if you don't want help, that's fine, but you deal with it. I gotta go. And then Liz was like, oh, no one's talked to me that way before, especially not Peter Parker. I'm gonna start calling him Petey, and now I'm intrigued. I was like, oh my goodness. Liz even stops by Dr. Connors' lab because she knows that Peter, or Petey, as she now calls him, is there. Dr. Connors and Eddie Brock is like, yeah, Liz, give Peter a chance. You know, he'll be able to help out. Gwen Stacy ain't liking it. You can see that look on Gwen Stacy's face. She's like, I've been working on this for a while. Don't you just show up right now, Liz Allen. Meanwhile, Dr. Connors is like, hold on for a second. I gotta go in a different room, and y'all can't see me while I put some more of this lizard DNA in my body to try to get my arm back. And his wife catches him and is like, what are you doing? He's like, look, I need this. Back off. I need this vaccine. Electro attacks, shooting his electric bolts everywhere. I really like the design of Electro in this one. It's really cool to see the freaking electric face. And while he's zapping his electricity all over the place, one of his electric bolts actually hits Dr. Connors' lizard formula. We get this really cool Spider-Man and Electro fight. They're going at it against each other. I especially love that every time Spider-Man is in the middle of an intense fight, that's when Aunt May calls because he realizes it's almost 10. He's about to break his curfew. Aunt May is not happy either. She's like, fool. Calling me to tell me you're gonna be late was not the conditions of your curfew. You're supposed to actually be here. But of course, Spider-Man can't tell Aunt May what's going on, makes up some excuses, fights Electro on top of a giant electric tower, which he figures was not a good idea to fight Electro on, but then eventually stops Electro by pushing him inside of a giant swimming pool. So Spidey was able to save the day, and Liz Allen is all like, yeah, let's do this tutoring session. I'm like, all right, Peter. But as soon as Flash Thompson and the crew came by, she immediately turned to, get out of here, you geek. Girls, go figure. And then you look up in the sky and the Spider logo in the sky. Spidey in the sky, oh. But the one thing Spidey can't get right is pictures of himself. Every single time he tries, either the aim of the camera is bad or he gets a flash that blurs the photo out. He still cannot get a good picture of himself, which he is trying to do so he can get that money. Meanwhile, we cut back to Dr. Connors, and after 3 episodes of setting up, very good job, he eventually uses the formula that got zapped by Electro, and that's the one that works. He wakes up at night, he's all like, what's going on? And then you see this really cool animation of his arm coming back, and it's like, oh, shoot, that's awesome. And I love his wife was like, hey, great job. Also, I'm mad at you. How dare you do this to yourself? And he's like, but look, I got an arm back. Like, this is great. She's like, yeah, but are you sure this is going to work out okay? And we all know it's not going to work out okay. But we let them have this moment. The kid comes in. I was like, hey, you got your arm back. Eddie Brock at the lab is all like, oh my God, Dr. Connors, you got back your arm. Peter and Gwen eventually get there. They have some adventures at school. Flash Thompson is once again trying to give Peter crap, throwing water balloons at him. And at first, Peter is able to dodge all the water balloons because he's Spider-Man. He can sense that Spidey sense. So even another time earlier where Flash would throw a football at him, and he's like, Spidey sense, miss me. But this time he did a little bit too much. So people started to notice, like, oh man, when did he get so good at moving around? So that's when Peter was like, secret identity. I gotta let him hit me. So he just stands there and lets Flash hit him with the water balloons so he doesn't give up that he's Spider-Man. To the point where even Gwen Stacy stands up for Peter, is all like, if you could throw as good in the football game, maybe we'll win a game once or twice. And everyone starts laughing. Even to the point where his friend, Phil Lamar, the football player, is all like, hey, you got burned. I like these guys. So yeah, Dr. Connors got his arm back, but he also got some scales. Celebrating at the lab about him being able to have this formula work for him. But then his wife was like, take off your shirt though. He's like, what? Honey, wait till we get home. He pulls his shirt off and there's all these scales on the back of him and he can feel the lizard DNA starting to really take over. And he goes full lizard. Dr. Connors changes into a lizard and we see the entire thing happen. And it's freaky. Like there's one point where his head flattens out, like the top of his head just goes, and I was like, oh my God. And you see like the mouth completely changed. Like it shows the whole transformation. I was like, wow, they showed this in a Saturday morning cartoon? This is kind of scary. It's really awesome, but it's scary. Dr. Connors becomes the lizard. After that brutal lizard transformation, we get some great fights between Spider-Man and the lizard. That takes place in the subway, that takes place at the zoo. They really go off with these fighting scenes. And you see things like the train getting broke apart. I also love that random New Yorkers just start to be a part of it too. Like this old lady just hits the lizard with a purse. Meanwhile, other people are taking photos and stuff. You know, it's just typical like New York response to a giant lizard fighting Spider-Man in a subway train. You gotta love that attention to detail. The subway fighting was super cool. They go to the zoo. Spider-Man almost gets drowned because the lizard just like grabs him, takes him underwater. And there's even a point where this alligator comes over like, hey, I want some of that. And the lizard's like, no, this is mine. Eventually they make an antidote to change Dr. Connors back. But Peter was like, wait a minute, that could also maybe change me back. Get rid of my Spider-Man stuff and become just regular Peter Parker again. But I don't want that. I'm Spider-Man. So with the help of Eddie Brock, who's still friends right now, Spider-Man was able to hold down the lizard, put the antidote into the lizard, changing him back to Dr. Connors. I'm assuming that's it. Will we ever see the lizard again? I haven't watched all the episodes yet, but for right now, he's back to regular old Dr. Connors. But freaking Peter Parker, he messed up because he still wanted to get that photo. So he took a photo of him fighting the lizard as Spider-Man and sold that to the Daily Bugle, and they put that in the paper. So everyone at the lab saw that photo and were very upset because they were hoping that Peter was going to help them try to stop the lizard, which technically he did. He just went off and did it as Spider-Man without telling them he's Spider-Man. So they just thought he ran off and got this photo instead to get some notoriety. And they were like, it's messed up, Peter. Peter had to apologize. Like, I'm sorry. I needed to get some money and I felt bad about it. And they're like, hey, we understand. That was your decision. It's cool. But you know what? We can't trust you now. So you fired from the internship. Dang. So a very upset Peter Parker takes that antidote with him maybe I should take it. If I take this antidote, I wouldn't be Spider-Man and wouldn't have people mad at me because I have to keep this identity a secret. And he's just about to drink it. But of course, he looked at that picture of Uncle Ben and was like, with great power comes great responsibility. And he's like, but wait a minute. As Spider-Man, I was able to stop the lizard. I was able to help my friends, even though I don't get a ticker tape parade, even though I don't get the accolades, I still am able to help people. And that's important. So he's like, I'll put this away. I ain't gonna drink it. I'm gonna be cool with it right now. I'm gonna keep being Spider-Man. And then, of course, in the sky, Spidey in the sky. Oh. Just having that moment of like, does he want to give it up? And even having the opportunity to give it up. That was a really cool moment. And that just shows, again, how good the storytelling is on this show. I'm hooked, man. 3 episodes in, I'm like, I want to watch the rest of it. There's 26 episodes total. I want to watch them all. I'm probably going to be upset. I have a feeling the last episode is going to have some cliffhanger stuff. And I'll be like, you never finished it. But yeah, man, I really see why people like this show. It's a very well done Spider-Man series. It gives us depth to some of the characters. It gives different layers of depth to the villains. And also added that teen angst element of Peter trying to deal with Gwen Stacy, Liz Allen. We haven't even gotten Mary Jane Watson up in here yet. I think she comes up in an episode or 2 later. Then, of course, if Liz is all like, hey, Petey, what's that going to be for Flash Thompson? You know, is that going to be a problem? Harry, of course, having to live up to the Osborn name and having to be constantly judged by his dad. It's really cool that they added all these elements together and are able to tell all these different stories in a half-hour series. It's a really good show. And now I do get it. I get why people who grew up with this particular Spider-Man cartoon are like, boo! Marvel getting bought by Disney and Sony not keeping the animation rights, and now we can't have this show, just be in limbo now forever. But at least it is all out there. The whole thing's on DVD. There are now various ways to watch it online. So at least the Spectacular Spider-Man has not disappeared into the animation vault of lost media. You can still see it, unlike a lot of other cartoons. I at least wanted to let you know how I felt about the series so far, and so far, so good. I would even say spectacular. Were you a Spectacular Spider-Man fan? Did you watch this animated series and enjoy it? Or if you've never seen it before, did this entice you to maybe want to check it out? And if there is any other animated series that you grew up with that I don't really talk about that much, please feel free to suggest it. Maybe I can check out some other cartoons that you loved as part of your nostalgia that I never saw. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you're new here, please subscribe to this channel and check out all the videos that I make. I love you like a play cousin. I'm Audi 5000. Spectacular, spectacular Spider-Man.